Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Donovan's Daily Dose. I'm your favorite APUS history teacher, Mr. Donovan, and today we're going to talk about Andrew Jackson, one of the most fascinating historical figures ever. And when he's not dueling people or eating cheese in the White House, he is going to fundamentally change the presidency. So let's talk first a little bit about the background of Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson grows up poor on the Western frontier. He's going to be the only president to technically serve during both the War of 1812 and the American Revolution. And this upbringing from a poor background and this emergence to national fame really sets the scene for his political beliefs, which historians refer to as Jacksonian democracy. Now, there's a couple key elements that are things that you should definitely know about Jacksonian democracy, including first, he is one of the biggest advocates for getting rid of property qualifications in order to vote. So, for the early part of American history, including the late 1700s and early 1800s, most states had property qualifications, meaning you had to own a certain amount of land in order to vote. He believes that this is wildly undemocratic and helps to spur movements throughout multiple different states to get rid of this. Because of his reputation for this, his military service, and his humble upbringing, he is known as the champion of the common man. He is not one of these aristocratic, elite, rich lawyers or somebody, a big plantation owner from Virginia. He portrays himself as an average, everyday American citizen, which makes his populace, his group that supports him the most, predominantly being Southern and Western farmers. Now, Andrew Jackson is known for the fact that he wants a smaller federal government, but a lot of his policies actually go against this idea. Let's take a look at example one with the Indian Removal Act. So Andrew Jackson signs this into place after it's passed by Congress, and this is going to force the 5 civilized tribes of the American Southeast to leave their ancestral lands to move out to Oklahoma for what today we kind of consider reservation type territory. So he wanted this land for a lot of frontiersmen and a lot of farmers. And this is going to lead to one of the most difficult times of Andrew Jackson's presidency, called the Trail of Tears. The physical journey takes an enormous toll on the Native Americans who are forced to move, sometimes at gunpoint, from the American Southeast to Oklahoma. And during that time, we'll see almost roughly a quarter to about a third of all Native Americans die in the journey due to starvation or the spread of disease or lack of water. A lot of things caused on the journey. Now, some Native Americans fight back against this through the court system. In a famous case called Worcester v. Georgia, the Supreme Court actually rules that Native Americans are entitled to their land and they can't be forced off. And since we have a system of checks and balances, Andrew Jackson, as executive, is supposed to listen to what the Supreme Court says, especially the Chief Justice, who is John Marshall. But after John Marshall makes his ruling, Andrew Jackson famously says something along the lines of, "John Marshall has made his decision. Now let him enforce it." Basically meaning he's going to ignore what the Supreme Court says. And this is just one example. Another example, it's going to be the vetoing of the National Bank. So Andrew Jackson believes that the National Bank only helps wealthy merchants, especially in the Northeast and the New England region. He believes it's not necessary for the function of the United States. And even though the Supreme Court already ruled that a national bank is constitutional and allowed, when it is put up for rechartering or reapproval, Andrew Jackson vetoes it. And he uses a constitutional argument that he does not believe it's constitutionally right for the federal government to have this, even though the Supreme Court has already said that it is. And then last but not least, we have the nullification crisis. So during the early 1830s, there's going to be conflicts over tariffs. Remember, tariffs are those taxes on imported goods, aka goods coming into the United States. And Southerners really dislike tariffs. They hate tariffs because they hurt their ability to trade with foreign countries. You got to remember, the South at this time is the Cotton Kingdom. They are producing a lot of just raw cotton, and they are buying their manufactured goods from European traders. So as tariffs increase, foreign trade decreases, which hurts Southern plantation owners trying to sell their raw resources, their cash crops and markets, and sending it over to European markets. So much so that South Carolina threatens to ignore this federal tax. They threaten that they aren't going to pay it. They aren't going to enforce it. They are going to what's called nullify it, which essentially means ignore or avoid it. This movement is led by John C. Calhoun. And at this time, he is actually Andrew Jackson's vice president. So Andrew Jackson takes huge offense to this. And even though he has a lot of Southern sympathies at this time and a huge amount of his base is Southern supporters, he's extremely angry with the state of South Carolina. As the leader of the executive branch, it is his job to enforce the laws, even laws that Southerners don't like. So he threatens to use the United States military to force South Carolina to collect these taxes. However, before he goes there, there is a political compromise made thanks to Henry Clay and John C. Calhoun, where they create the Compromise Tariff of 1833, which will gradually reduce the percentage of the tariff on foreign goods throughout the next 9 years. But as you can see, even though Jackson is going to say that he's an advocate of small government, some of his actions actually show the opposite. So that's it for Donovan's Daily Dose for Andrew Jackson. Make sure you like, subscribe, and have an awesome rest of your day.